To be able to understand today's conflict between Russia and Ukraine, we must browse through some history books. But don't worry, we did that for you. The history of tension between Russia and Ukraine dates back to the Middle Ages. Both states have their origins in the East Slavic state called the Principality of Kiev, which ruled from the 9th to the 13th century. Kiev was the capital of this principality. The destruction of Principality of Kiev started with the Mongol invasion in 1240 and led to the dispersion of these two nations. Nationalists of both countries claim that this principality belongs to them. It is safe to say that both nations have a common historical background. Russian President Vladimir Putin often mentioned single community when referring to Ukraine. However, looking at the historical flow, it is seen that the paths of both nations diverged centuries ago. Although these two nations are similar to each other, two different languages and cultures emerged over time. Russia turned into an empire in the 18th century. On the other hand, Ukraine failed to establish its own state. Majority of the territory of today's Ukraine became part of the Russian Empire. The Russian Empire survived from the 18th to the 20th centuries. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Russian Empire collapsed as a result of Russian Revolution. After the collapse of the Russian Empire, Ukraine was independent for a short period of time until the establishment of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was founded in 1922, which hosted more than 100 ethnic groups including Ukrainians and continued its existence for nearly 70 years as the largest country in the world in terms of surface area. By 1990, the Soviet Union was in the process of disintegration. As in all other Soviet countries, the nationalist wave started to rise in Ukraine. Ukraine left the Soviet Union on August 24, 1991. Leonid Kravchuk became the country's first president. In December 1991, the leaders of Russia, Ukraine and Belarus formed the Commonwealth of Independent States. This agreement represented the official collapse of the Soviet Union. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, disagreements broke out between Ukraine and Russia over the division of the Black Sea Navy fleet. Both Kravchuk and the Russian President Boris Yeltsin argued that the fleet belongs to their country. On June 23, 1992, the presidents of the two countries agreed to jointly manage the fleet. However, after the Ukrainian-flagged patrol ship SKR-112 went to Odessa in June 1992, both parties nearly came into an armed conflict. Moreover, the two countries couldn't share the common aircraft carrier, which increased the tension in the area. By establishing the Commonwealth of Independent States, Russia aimed to maintain its control over the former Soviet countries. In addition to that, Russia planned to retain a strong bond with former Soviet countries by supplying cheap natural gas. However, things didn't go as planned. While Belarus formed a close alliance with Russia, Ukraine turned its face to the West. This situation significantly disturbed Russia. After a while, Russia and Ukraine sat down together for compromise talks. With the agreement signed in 1997, the two countries officially recognized each other's borders. The 2004 presidential elections were an important breaking point in the history of Ukraine. Russia was supporting Viktor Yanukovych during the elections. Dissident Viktor Yushchenko was supported by the West. In the second round of the election, Yanukovych narrowly won the election. Yushchenko called his supporters to go out to the streets after international observers claimed that there were serious violations and fraud in the elections. After Yushchenko's call, mass protests broke out across the country. These protests were called the Orange Revolution because of Yushchenko's use of the color orange in his election campaign. As the countrywide protests grew, the election results were declared invalid and it was decided to repeat the voting. In the re-elections, the Western-backed Yushchenko received 51.9% of the total votes, while Yanukovych remained at 44.2%. Thus, Yushchenko became the new president of the country. During Yushchenko's administration, Russia turned off Ukraine's gas tap twice in 2006 and 2009. At the end of protracted negotiations, Ukraine was forced for an agreement that doubled the price of Russian gas. In 2008, US President George Bush tried to include Ukraine and Georgia in an official preparatory program with the aim of becoming a member of NATO. Putin immediately objected to this attempt. Russia has made it clear that they don't fully recognize Ukraine's independence. Since things were not running fast with NATO, Ukraine considered developing its relations with Western countries by signing European Union Association Agreement. A few months before the signing of the agreement, Russia put great economic pressure on Ukraine in the summer of 2013, causing the agreement to be suspended. Russia annexed Crimea in March 2014. Following the annexation, armed conflicts broke out between the militia organizations, supported by Russia, and the Ukraine administration, supported by the West, in the Donbas region of Ukraine, where the Russian population was predominated. Tens of thousands of civilians lost their lives. Majority of the population in the region migrated. Infrastructures of the cities were severely damaged. The Russian-backed cities Donetsk and Luhansk declared their unilateral independence from Kiev. According to the claims of the Ukrainian administration, Russia deployed its soldiers without uniforms to the region. In the end, the war ended with a ceasefire signed in Minsk in September 2014. Crimea was annexed to Russia as a result of a controversial referendum held in 2014. Ukraine accuses Russia of invading the eastern part of the country and the Crimea. In return, Ukraine abolished the Friendship, Cooperation and Partnership Agreement signed with Russia in 1997. Looking at the current situation today, Russian President Vladimir Putin refuses to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, claiming that he doesn't implement the Minsk Agreement. Putin also openly demands from the United States that Ukraine should never join NATO and receive military aid. However, NATO turned down this request. Lately, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that Russia recognized the independence of Donetsk and Luhansk, which increased the tension in the area even more. Thanks for watching. Let's just hope for peace all around the world. Please do not forget to like and subscribe.